Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm Father Jim Corda. Wineskins is a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of issues and topics, all from a Catholic perspective. Wineskins is brought to you through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our program today, I will interview Tom Rudnicki and Alan Ricks in part 3 of our television series called Spotlight. We will talk about prison ministry. We will also hear more information on the life and times of St. Joseph, and today, as the Church celebrates the third Sunday of Lent, we will get a deeper insight into those particular Sunday readings. That and more on Wineskins. Catholic Charities is an important part of the life of the Church and her members. Now I will speak with Adrienne Curry, who is a Social Action Director for Catholic Charities and the Diocese of Youngstown, on Operation Rice Bowl. Joining me now is Adrienne Curry, who is the Director of Social Action for the Diocese of Youngstown. Welcome again to Wineskins.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We know that during the Lenten season that the lives of Catholics are marked with many traditions. And one of those traditions, at least in the area of social justice for us, is the Operation Rice Bowl. And we know that you're in charge of that. And give us a brief history of Operation Rice Bowl.
Well, now it's called CRS Rice Bowl. And it started in Allentown, Pennsylvania in the 1970s. So it's been around a long time. And it calls Catholics to fast, pray, and give alms.
Now, when we talk about giving alms, where exactly do these alms go once they're collected in local parishes?
Well, 75% of the monies raised goes to the designated countries. 25% stays in the Diocese of Youngstown, and I give that money out in Rice Bowl grants for local area food pantries and soup kitchens.
Now, I would imagine during these difficult times in our country, in our communities, that a lot of people are looking for assistance. How and why is this Rice Bowl so important in the lives of so many people?
Well, I've found that when I give out the 25%, it's during a time when parishes are not thinking about giving to food pantries. So in the summer, the money is distributed in June when food pantries are empty. And so people think about giving to food pantries and whatnot from Thanksgiving to Christmas, but not during the summer because people are on vacation and having a good time.
And we know that those people who are hungry and needy
are hungry every day.
365 days a year, exactly.
Yes.
When we encourage the folks in our parishes to contribute to the CRS Rice Bowl this year, what would be most important for them to keep in mind about why their money is so important?
Well, their money is going towards countries that are really dependent on the help of other people. This year's featured countries are India, Zambia, which is in South Africa, El Salvador, Mexico, and Ethiopia. And then the last week of Lent is always designated for a U.S. diocese, and this year it's Honolulu, so that'll be their featured. People will get a rice bowl and a calendar. They'll be encouraged to cook the meatless recipes every week. There's a recipe from each country. And the calendar also has the principle of Catholic social teaching, the project that is featured in the country, a little bit about the family that's featured in the project, and ways to contribute to their rice bowl. Like sometimes they'll say, put a quarter in for every bathroom you have, or the money that you saved from not going out, put that in your rice bowl. So there are things that are conscious that people can do.
In our last few minutes of our time together, I think it's really important for us to focus on not just giving our money, but why we do it and why it's important, and to really understand the social justice aspect that's there. It's just more than giving money. And, why is that so important for us, especially as Catholics, to kind of get more in tune with why we're doing some of these outreach programs?
Well, a lot of times people don't realize what Catholic social teaching really is. And one of the things that I like about Rice Bowl, past maybe 5 or 6 years is they specifically designate a principal for each week. And so people learn about the principle of Catholic social teaching and why we do what we do.
And I think for us as Catholics, it's so important for us to know why we do what we do.
Yes.
Not only for us personally, but enabled to share with others and also to really kind of carry on the faith and the spirit of social justice. In our final minute, what would you like to tell the folks that are with us about Rice Bowl?
Well, I would encourage all parishes and schools to participate in Rice Bowl. I would encourage them, if they have a food pantry or support a soup kitchen, to apply for a Rice Bowl grant. Last year, we gave out 14 grants that totaled almost $16,000. So it behooves you to participate, because I will probably give you some kind of assistance if you participate in Rice Bowl.
Well, Adrienne Curry, it's always a pleasure to have you on Wineskins, and thank you for highlighting this very important aspect of the Lenten season, CRS Rice Bowl.
Thank you.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Corda. Saint Joseph was a blessed spouse of the Virgin Mary. To tell us more is Maria Bova. She is from Cardinal Mooney High School and a parishioner of St. Charles Church in Boardman.
The feast of St. Joseph on March 19th did not become widespread until the 15th century. There was a feast in honor of St. Joseph in the Roman Breviary published in 1482, but the first Mass celebrated in his honor at Rome was in 1505. In the Eastern Church, St. Joseph's feast was celebrated as early as the 5th century. In 1621, Pope Gregory XV made the feast of St. Joseph a holy day of obligation, but that today is no longer universally observed. The genealogy of St. Joseph is given in the Gospels of St. Matthew and St. Luke. We also know from the Gospel that he was a carpenter, who was very likely taught his foster son, Jesus, the trade. The tribute paid to him in the sacred scriptures is what he was a just man. On several occasions, St. Joseph was instructed by an angel in dreams to do God's will in the safekeeping of Mary and Jesus. Pope Pius IX proclaimed St. Joseph the patron of the Universal Church. The opening prayer of the Mass states that the Father entrusted our Savior to the care of St. Joseph. In this statement, we have the first theme, namely the fidelity of St. Joseph in fulfilling his role as spouse of Mary and foster father of Jesus. The second theme pertains to St. Joseph's role as a foster father of Jesus. In the preface of the Mass, we hear, "With fatherly care he watched over Jesus Christ, your Son, conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit." The third theme refers to St. Joseph's prompt obedience. While we have no spoken words attributed to St. Joseph, the Gospel tells us that Joseph did as the angel of the Lord directed him. As universal patron of the Church, he exercises a spiritual fatherhood in the relation to all the faithful. For Wineskins, I am Maria Bova.
Welcome back to our show. We're talking about prison ministry. Before we took the break, I was curious about those people who work in the prison. Do you have any involvement or communication with them? And what involvement do they have with the inmates?
Of course, we work for Deputy Warden Palmer, who is in charge of religious services. And underneath him, there's actually a full-time chaplain there that they have that we work with that helps. And they're both, and also Warden Remick, who's the head of security there, has also been very helpful over the years with us and support us tremendously. The chaplain is a big supporter of us also. So, and we deal with the other religious groups that come in there. There's some Protestant woman that comes in there, very saintly woman that comes in there in a very difficult situation. And then, of course, the administration, beyond that, the COs that we deal with, many of them are Catholics, and we've always find that they're seem to be more helpful with us, and they realize what we're in there for. But not just the Catholic. There's some that are very religious, correction officers, that help us and guide us through the things. So that's been a really wonderful experience, and they've been very supportive of us. They really have.
What if there are people that are watching that would like to be involved? What would you tell them, and how would you go about getting them more involved?
like heightening the awareness of how important this ministry is.
It's important to challenge ourselves in our faith and to really reach and go beyond our comfort zone, the circle we all have around us, and push ourselves a little bit. And so if anyone is interested in challenging themselves and going to the next level, I think considering prison ministry or some other work of mercy is very important. Truly brings a closer feeling in the presence of God, I think, and it's just once you do it, you understand, and I think it's just take the step forward.
And we know that many of our parishes within the diocese are involved. The Ursuline Sisters are involved. Mm-hmm. How are they involved, and what more can they do?
Well, they're involved in our RCA program. We recently, they were involved prior to that in terms of letter writing and sending cards, and also some of the sisters have had long-term relations in speaking to them, talking to their families. But recently, we reached out to ask them to help us in the RCIA program for the non-Catholics as far as converting to Catholicism. Mm-hmm. And they've embraced that, and they review the homework. There's a book that we use, a booklet that we use at Fort Prison RCIA. They help us in write letters and write notes and do an excellent job. Matter of fact, they're going to be at the baptism and confirmation later this month with Bishop Murray, mm-hmm. and as godparents and as sponsors for confirmation. So we really rely on them as well.
Very good. Now, you got involved, Tom, through the parish. What would you encourage other parishes to do or to consider if they're not involved?
We would be happy to go there and speak at the parishes. We had talked about doing that in some of the parishes, and Anthony and Al, of course, are both excellent speakers. We would be happy to go to any parish and talk about the ministry and really, because I don't think people understand. A lot of times they don't even understand that we do have the Ohio Penitentiary here in the Youngstown area and Supermax Prison. They don't really understand that it's here. They forget that it's here. And it's really an opportunity to show a lot of compassion. And I would be happy to come in and speak anywhere to any group. And we have done a little bit of that, and we'd like to do some more of that. But if anybody's interested in getting involved in our ministry, certainly Mike O'Brien at the diocese is our director, and he would be the first contact, and we would encourage anybody to get involved in that they feel that they want to have this as a statement of faith to move forward.
What would be some of the fears that people might have? I talked about the myths that we want to dispel. Mm-hmm. What are some of the fears that people might have that you could assuage and say you really don't have to feel that way going into a prison?
Well, I think the fear is, first of all, that there just the institution itself and the presence of the security, and these are bad people, but they're humans, and as mentioned before, we've all made mistakes. They've just made a few more, maybe. In any case, I think that it's once you go once or twice, it feels. You don't have that feeling at all. I mean, there's a lot of compassionate people in the prison system, both staff and COs, as he mentioned, which are the correction officers. There are a lot of them. Some of them are very compassionate, and so it really is not a bad place. It's an institutional facility. You just have to try it, and believe me, it didn't concern me at all, even the first time I went there.
My experience of ministry is that it's kind of a two-way street. Mm-hmm. We who minister do it because we feel called to do it. And we hope and we trust that the ministry that we extend to someone else is being received. And I mentioned this earlier on, what about what we get in return? Isn't that sometimes more important? What we feel about ourselves? And you had mentioned about priests giving a homily during a service in the prison, and the interaction and the dialogue that takes place. Right. What do they give back to you?
Well, it's just a blessing when we go in there. We go in there and we meet these individuals, and they've been in their cell 23 and a half hours a day, and you go up to the cell, and all you do is look into a little window there, and that's their only output to the word, and you walk up to them in the morning, and they're smiling. What a blessing that is. Mm-hmm. That they're just grateful to see you. They're grateful to receive the Eucharist. Many of them kneel down when we give it, very reverent. It's just a very impressive It sounds like it would be a difficult situation, but it's just so much of a blessing to see these people with joy in their hearts, the joy of the Lord in their hearts, that they've accepted the Lord, and the Lord has given this peace in their heart, and they're moving forward with their lives, even in the extremely difficult situations. And that's really what I get out of it. It just that feedback, just the Spirit of the Lord shines through that door, and it's just unbelievable, really.
And Al, you have a closing statement you'd like to make. Would you like to read that for us?
I think if anyone is interested in challenging themselves and really reaching deeper into their faith and looking for a path of discipleship, considering prison ministry, I think, is very rewarding, brings you to a closer presence with God, and really walking in the path of Christ. And what would Jesus, often I say to myself, what would Jesus do? And I think it's very rewarding beyond comprehension. That experience and that ministry, this ministry of prison ministry, is very touching and really helps you with your faith.
Al Ricks, Tom Rudnicki, thank you so much for
enlightening
us about prison ministry. It's an important ministry within the church. We encourage the folks that are with us, if they would like to get more involved, contact their parish or call the diocese. There's certainly room in that fellowship for that kind of ministry. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you for having us, Father.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
For more pertinent information and to listen to Wineskins, visit www.doy.org, the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
I am Maryknoll.
Je suis Maryknoll.
I am Maryknoll.
I believe that we are all connected to each other, and that is the gift of compassion that unites us and makes us one. It doesn't matter what language, culture, or tradition we come from. We can share compassion wherever we are.
Maryknoll, an American Catholic organization of priests and brothers, has been reaching out to those in need for nearly 100 years in 26 countries throughout the world. Maryknoll dedicates 86 cents of every dollar donated to their programs, and with your help, they can do more. Missioners, workers, volunteers, supporters, we are all Maryknoll.
I am Maryknoll.
Yo soy Maryknoll.
I'm Father Mike, and I am Maryknoll.
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 Christopher Minutes. Thoughts on making every day count. Here's Monsignor Jim Lisanti.
Hello, friends. Here's a thought just for today. Guy Kawasaki, an Apple Corporation executive, offers these suggestions for business and for life. First, ignore people's current status. Letting status determine how you treat people is narrow-minded. Plus, yesterday's subordinate may be tomorrow's peer. Second, help others. Don't do things for others to get something in return. Offer to help because it's the right thing to do. The help you give today can come back to you in unexpected ways. Third, focus on little things. Thank you notes, baby gifts, simple acts of kindness. You will be repaid countless times. Fourth, there is enough good fortune to go around. Someone else's good luck doesn't take away from yours. Finally, give back, whether through your church or through charitable organizations. Share the blessings you've been given.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
Our song today is from the CD called From a Quiet Place. It is by Vince Ambrosetti. As we celebrate this third Sunday of Lent, we will hear more about the sacred scriptures by Father Bill Loveless. He is pastor of St. Brendan Church in Youngstown.
Have you had to do without fresh water coming from your tap recently? That happened to me recently for only a short period of time, and I was amazed at how much I take fresh, clean water for granted. A friend of mine told me of her experience in Africa of having to draw water from a well and carry it back some distance for use in the home. Later, when I picked up a 3-quart bottle of orange juice, it suddenly seemed considerably heavier. At about 2.84 liters, it weighed about 2.84 kilograms, or for us in the United States, that amounted to 6.25 pounds. So, the thought of filling containers like that at a well and carrying them back home for use seemed like a lot of work indeed. For the Hebrew people, when they were wandering in the desert and knowing how dependent they were on clean water, they were overjoyed when Moses struck a rock with his staff and pure water flowed out for them. They were worried that they and their families would die of thirst before they ever approached the promised land. But God's love flooded them with clean water that gushed from the rock. That good news was crystal clear to St. Paul, who spoke in his letter to the Romans of the life-giving power of God's love in our hearts. It seems to me that he must have been captivated by some waterfall where he preached, because he wrote of the love of God pouring into our hearts with a word that was also used in Greek to speak of the gushing of water over a waterfall. He said, "The love of God has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." And so what he was really saying was something like, yes, the love of God is like this, pouring as life-giving fresh water in an amount that leaves us in awe, and plunging into the chasm with a power that startles us. In the Gospel of John 2, we hear of a scene that has to do with water, but it speaks not only of God's love, but also of our thirst for truth. The scene opens when a Samaritan woman came to draw water in the hot Near Eastern sun at midday. Because the sun was hot, this was not the time when women would ordinarily draw water. Regardless, her task of drawing water was interrupted when a Jewish man named Jesus broke tradition to speak with her. The reason was that Jews didn't talk to Samaritans, and men did not speak to women unless they were related. She was then astonished when he told her that he had living water, such that she would never thirst again. Water was heavy, and she had to carry a heavy jar of water daily from the well to her home. She didn't grasp immediately that he was speaking of something spiritual and not material. Nonetheless, she was finally convinced by this Jesus and came to believe that he was the Messiah when he told her that what was weighing heavily on her heart. He offered her the living water of the Spirit, and after that, the thirsting she knew in life, not a desire for water, but a thirsting for truth, for love, and for acceptance, was quenched once and for all by the presence of God's Spirit in her heart. And that wasn't all. The living water that Jesus gave her was also the water of His Word, the good news, providing her the refreshment and the nourishment she needed. And from our perspective, we can understand the living water Jesus offered as the water of baptism. For the Samaritan woman was plunged into the new life of Christ and flooded with His holiness. In our time, Jesus offers the same. We are often overcome with thirst, but it isn't a thirst for water. It is a thirst for hope and meaning in a life that we can only find in Christ. The good news is that we only need to turn to Him to find it. Likewise, we are like the Roman community addressed by St. Paul. We need to be reminded in the midst of our daily problems and difficulties that the love of God comes flooding into our hearts. For if we thirst for hope and meaning, we thirst even more for love. But there is one more thing to note. In order to grow, the woman at the well needed to hear the truth from Jesus, a truth that she needed to change her life to follow Him. Likewise, we too, all of us, need to face up to the truth that we need to turn from sin and follow Jesus more fully. For Wineskins, I'm Father Bill Loveless.
Let us expose our heart and life to Jesus Christ. We can meet Him in the Holy Eucharist. We can talk to Him in prayer. We can walk with Him in the avenues of service. We can experience His forgiveness in our lives. Christ can become a living reality in us. Wineskins is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. It is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda, wishing you a beautiful week.